It's monkey time.
Many unexpected aspects, especially the ass.
All right, well, welcome to the Space Turtle Show. Another episode coming to you guys. This time we're talking about 12 Monkeys, sponsored by my dead succulent here.
Yes.
It's finally gone. I've not been very good at taking care of it.
It's been gone, man. It's been dying for a while now.
It's actually, these videos are a good time lapse of watching a plant die in like real time.
Yeah, you guys gotta check out the other videos to see when it was alive, man.
Yeah, that's why you gotta check them out so you can see
honor the
dead succulent.
Rip.
I didn't even have a name for it. It's just succulent.
All right,
Anyway.
So today was your pick. You said it was 12 Monkeys. What are your overall thoughts on this movie? Maybe a little summary as well.
Well, I guess so. This is time travel thriller, and it centers around Bruce Willis's character, and he's basically a criminal that gets brought in by a couple scientists, and they're like, hey, we want you to do some scientific research, and in exchange, we'll pardon you. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but you're really in no position to bargain. Anyway, it's basically a movie about how time travel can fuck up your mind, and talking about the details of fate, or if what we do matters, and a couple things like that. And I wanted to pick this movie because it is kind of in honor of Bruce Willis, who was recently retired from acting, and he was a big actor as far as me growing up watching his movies and doing, getting into film when I was in like middle school or whatever. I could get started with like Die Hard or like M. Night Shyamalan stuff, like Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, that kind of stuff. And I've dug into his philosophy, filmography since then. Kind of his philosophy, I guess. But and I just love a lot of his performances. And, he's got a rare brain disease right now, and it's hurting his memory. And it's really unfortunate. So I figured we could talk about one of the only Bruce Willis movies of like his iconic movies that I haven't seen before, and I don't think you've seen before, and
I had not.
This was that. So how'd you feel about it?
Honestly, it was really unexpected my first time watching it, because I don't know why. The poster, the like quick summary that I've read, maybe things that I've heard about it, it just pointed to a lot more serious of a film, other than the fact that there's Terry Gilliam directing it. I know that kind of signals a more goofy tone, but I was thinking it was a lot more grandiose than I was thinking it would be. I felt like I did get notions of that time travel, psychology, kind of like insanity, aspects from just hearing about it, and I felt like I was expecting more of like a single insane asylum type story, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something like that, with time travel added in there, maybe almost like a Jacob's Ladder type thing, which I have no idea why I was expecting that. But that's what I was expecting, and it came in to be a lot more of a jokey and like, Terry Gilliam's like set design and like his framing, he does a lot of that kind of stuff. But even in terms of the like setting aside the set design and that kind of stuff, there was a lot of like goofy portrayals in the movie. Like one of them, I felt that there was the insane patients, or like that.
You gotta mention Brad Pitt. Right?
Yeah,
like
Brad Pitt.
Kind of kooky
yeah,
Jim
very
Carrey
over
almost.
the top. Yeah, so that was a big surprise to me. I thought it would be a little bit more toned down of a thriller, a lot more like sci-fi, Mission Impossible, I don't know, like Born Identity or
Well,
something.
I don't know if it didn't strike me as those at all.
No,
really.
no, not like that, but just like if it was gonna be like an outside adventure, it'd be more like that one, and it stayed true to its goofy nature throughout. And yeah, I was unexpected, but I liked most of it, I would say.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that shoots out to me is the directing style. Like Terry Gilliam, he's not someone I haven't seen very many of his films, but I've seen a lot of analyzations of his films. Like I haven't seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and I've seen a lot of footage from it. But anyway, what I gather from it is like the kind of he's very experimental with the shots. He's very zany. Like oftentimes there'll be weird angles like this or that way, or like crazy like sideways like corkscrew angles, stuff like that. And it makes sense for the films he's trying to talk about, because in this one it's like you're looking at a guy going crazy from the burden of time traveling, which is a very appropriate take on time travel, because who wouldn't go crazy, really? It's fucking insane figuring out what's real and what's not real. And so I don't always love those kind of shots and those like over the top like zany, it's a very 90s kind of vibe, but I think for this movie it did work and I appreciated it here.
Mm-hmm. I think for me those angles are a little overused, I would say, in this movie. I want it to be more used like for directors of our time right now, like that are working. Well, I guess Terry Gilliam, is he still working?
Well, he had he made a movie in 2018. He hasn't made anything since.
Well, I guess just like modern blockbuster, or like the famous ones that are working right now. I want a little bit more of that zaniness, but there are some times in this movie where the angle is like tilted just like the whole time, and I'm like, okay, this is how I'm watching it now. And I guess there is the atmosphere that he is trying to instill upon by like having these angles that and these weird shots to make like crazy kookiness going on. But I did feel like there are sometimes there are serious scenes in this film, and there are like consequential stuff that's going on, and it's kind of hard to really engage with what the character's saying when it's like kind of tilted, in my opinion.
I don't fully agree with that, honestly, because I feel like they're doing a lot of zany, kooky things, but to me it felt like just for me it kind of hit as far as like the serious stuff, because it was goofy and zany, but it was also kind of like freaky. Like it was able to continue like wholeheartedly into that schizophrenic tone that I was able to buy it, and it was just it felt more serious as it went on, just because I was buying into it more and more, and that kind of worked for me. But I can understand how someone wouldn't, because it's pretty dated, to be honest, and it doesn't have like, it's very much of its time, and it's very out there.
Yeah.
Right? It's got a lot of those 90s kind of gothic grunge feel, like almost like a Tim Burton like Batman Returns, or something between that and like Blade, Guillermo del Toro, or like even The Matrix, like that kind of like grunge 90s, early 2000s thing. And they definitely don't make movies like this anymore. So it's nice as a time capsule to see every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. I feel like maybe we'll have a differing opinion then on the characters as well, because I feel like one of the drawovers of my criticism from from like the cinematography kind of draws parallels with the characters as well.
So you didn't like Brad Pitt?
I did not like Brad Pitt.
No, he was so good.
I mean, honestly, he was good. Like, he sold the performance, like reading about it and seeing that it was like all written, like all the, like, improvisational aspects of his stuff was mostly like written and stuff like that. That was impressive for him to be able to do, but I felt like I don't know, the craziness of the characters in the insane asylum and Brad Pitt as like a villain is like really, maybe not like a villain, but just like person of interest, I guess, really like keeps me from connecting with the cause that he's going for. And I feel like that kind of just makes him more fun to watch, but just because you've got nothing like underneath, because you're just like, oh, well, I guess if we don't have like a good backstory for this character, a good compelling reason, a good interest for this character, then we can just make him like really zany, and maybe that'll like convince the audience to be entertained while he's on screen.
I think that is a defining like split in our views, because to me, I don't necessarily need any of that. I don't need any like development or anything, as long as it's an interesting take on a character. And I felt like Brad Pitt he had a very interesting performance, especially looking at Brad Pitt's entire career. To see him do that is just remarkably different from anything else he's ever put out. And it's funny that he made like 7 the exact same year, and it's a completely different performance and a different Brad Pitt. So
yeah,
yes, I agree. I mean, he's not super well developed at all, but I don't feel like I need that kind of development. So
understandable.
Yeah, that's I guess that's the difference.
Yeah, that was a carryover from the other ones, which makes sense. But also, I feel like I shouted out to Brad Pitt because, like you said, that ranged from doing 7 to that, and also in the fact that like he will do Fight Club, and some of the stuff that he says in this movie is like kind of close to what he says in Fight Club about like capitalism and people controlling your minds and like all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to see that performance with the craziness of those notions, and then like a couple years later he's like saying the same thing with like a straight face, and it's like resonating with people, which is like super interesting. But yeah, I think as an overall opinion, I would say I really liked most aspects of this film, but there's a certain zaniness that Terry Gilliam inserts into this movie and the characters that are in this movie that I see being a lot more impactful in a satire, like surreal type setting rather than like a sci-fi. And maybe that's just my personal preference, but I generally like my sci-fi, and the themes that it's thinking about, which is like insanity and all that kind of stuff, is really more interesting to me if it's like grounded rather than off the wall.
And actually, it's funny that you say that about the Fight Club performance, because it makes me think like, what if David Fincher, he's hanging with Brad Pitt that year, and he was like looking at what he was doing in 12 Monkeys, and he was like, do a mix of like you and then like 12 Monkeys, but go like halfway.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Fight Club is definitely a better performance, because I mean, it's iconic, but it's interesting to see how that kind of that thought process, you can see it through film to film with him.
Yeah.
And how he got there. And yeah, I can understand your thinking where it's like, because I feel like this was it just felt like a 90s thing. You know?
It was definitely a very 90s.
It's just a very like 90s kind of, it's almost like German expressionism, where it's like the set design is so big and like the angles are so weird, and it's very experimental as far as like what you can do with like darkness and sets, and like very visually experimental. But it didn't feel like, honestly, a lot of times it didn't feel like they had the technology to like do what they wanted to do, but they were intellectually there.
Yeah.
But I think that's something magical about the 90s, and a hindrance from the 90s. It's like a little thing that makes it a time capsule, like I was saying. But
yeah, you have a lot more nostalgia for those types of films than me, so it's like I'm a little bit more. I don't know. I kind of like the realism of. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
well, yeah. I mean, you don't watch movies past 2000s, so.
hey, why are you blaming me, man? That's
I'm
not
telling you.
true.
It's completely true.
I watch films.
I've heard so many times. You never watch
are
those
old. I just don't do it as often.
It's
man.
only when I show them to.
Hey, no, man. I watched 7 before Fight Club, man.
That's true. That's true.
It's like very.
Hey, 7 is not very realistic at all, and you love 7.
That's true. That's true. But it's like I don't know, like real. Like, yeah. No. Okay. No.
No. I know what you mean.
No,
I know what you mean. I just, yeah. So how did you feel about like the other performances, like Bruce Willis, psychiatrist person? I don't actually know the actress's name.
I actually really like Bruce Willis's performance, and it was funny because I was reading one of the facts that comes along with the movie, and it's like Terry Gilliam had a list of things that Bruce Willis does in Bruce Willis movies, like have a steely blue-eyed gaze, and he's just like, don't do any of this stuff.
That's funny.
And so for real, I think that his performance really grounds the film. There is some like goofier aspects of how he breaks down or is like panicking that is I don't know, a little bit overplayed maybe, but I think it matches like the aesthetic of the movie itself, so it wasn't like a big criticism for me. So I thought in regards to all the other movies that he's played that I've seen in him, I thought this was like a top, maybe not as good as like The Sixth Sense or something, but up there.
Yeah, I would say grounded's a good word, because he's like normally he's a more stoic actor. He's like more on the stoic side as far as actors go. So for him to do something like this, it's like it feels a little out of his comfort zone. I think you can kind of see it a little bit that he's a little out of his comfort zone, which is good. You know, it's not bad at all, but I would say I like Brad Pitt more in this movie. I just like people that can go all the way, especially like with like the cinematography and like everything with this movie. But if you didn't love like all the style decisions, then Brad Pitt's definitely. I mean, again, he grounded it for sure, and so I appreciated him, and I thought the psychiatrist woman, she was good.
Yeah.
I don't have a very big opinion on her either way, actually.
I think like she was good in my opinion, positive, because there were interesting moments for her character when she starts realizing things, and you could definitely play that in a lot more I don't know, like strong or defiant way, and I feel like she kind of tackles it both in like the disbelief sense but also like acceptance. And sometimes there's things that go on in this movie, like that sci-fi that I see sometimes in other movies, they push to an extreme, you know, like taking the insanity of this guy and like pushing in, being like, oh, you weren't time travel or blah blah blah, you're just insane. I think this one kind of balances the two really well, and it actually kept me on my toes, that I was like, is this guy insane? Like, how's this going on? Like, and I think she also embodies that kind of notion. It wasn't like she was super stubborn, and this is also a bit of like character writing, but I feel like her performance was also selling the her care for the patients and her like understanding and realizing when she's wrong and stuff like that. The biggest thing I couldn't get into was the romance between them, though.
Oh yeah, I mean that's pretty rough.
Yeah,
to be honest, that's real Stockholm
doctor,
syndrome.
What's going on? Getting kidnapped.
A lot of things wrong with that one.
Sees him as a child. She's like, oh, It's all good.
Yeah. I mean, there's like, I did like their chemistry though. Like as far as like acting goes.
Yeah.
Romance, like as far as that decision,
yeah.
like I don't know about that one, you know. And I've actually heard Terry Gilliam's pretty problematic, but I don't remember what it was about. But I can imagine like someone who would write that would be a little problematic. You know, but
it's just like, I'm Bruce Willis. I'm from the future. I'm cool. Where's my girl, man?
Yeah, I need. Yeah, this would be like, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
You know, let's write it this way. But you know, I thought their chemistry was pretty good though. Actually, it was like. It was grounding, honestly. It was another instance of like...
It's really just them two, and then Brad Pitt's really just on the other end, like hammering down on that.
Seriously.
On the weirdness.
Like, the schizophrenia hospital, like, in there, like, everything's actually crazy. But then outside of it, like, no one's, like, super duper crazy, you know? It's just like weird camera angles.
Yeah.
It just makes it feel great. Like, it's one of those movies that... I finish it and I have like kind of a headache because like I'm having to twist my head so much, you know. I'm like, what? Now it's upside down. What the fuck? You know?
I feel like that is also like a difficulty for me because if it had stayed in that asylum, I think the overwhelming aspect of insanity and kookiness might have like turned me on his side, but because they're on they both get out and it's like this larger sci-fi journey, it is a little weird to have him act like that outside and like people are just regular people around him instead of especially that one scene where he's with his like gang or whatever and one of his dudes is like, that guy's actually insane. And I'm like, how does everyone not constantly say that? Like, is this some type of realization that you're having after he just talked? I even forgot what he was saying, but the guy was like, they're out there, and he's like, I know everything or something. Like, they've read all my mind. They've like created an AI to like predict my movements or something like that, which is a hilarious line. But
then the guy's like, you're a great man, dude.
Like
but that's so funny, though. That's so funny.
I know, but it kind of like mismatches with like the whole discovery and like sci-fi narrative, like in my opinion, that is like it's like every time it switches to Brad Pitt's character, it switches back to Bruce Willis and his co-star. Like doing their running from the police thing is almost like Whiplash, you know?
Yeah, and I will say like the insane asylum, those scenes were my favorite part.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that he did dampen a little bit once he left there. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I would have been okay if he just like stayed there and then that was the end of his role, was like in the insane asylum. Yeah. But then you have no plot, so I guess it's like, all right.
I feel like they could have gone with the dad being like the 12-month. Oh, well, maybe not.
Yeah, I guess you could have gone with the guy before, like the guy that ended up doing the whole serum, like the whole virus.
Yeah.
He could have been in it more, maybe. But I still thought Brad Pitt was good, but I do agree he was dampened in the real world, although it had some very funny scenes. Mm-hmm. It was pretty like Whiplash-esque.
Yeah. All right. So I did want to ask, what were your thoughts on the overall ending of the film and wrapping everything that we saw up? Did you?
Yeah, I thought it was like not bad. It felt natural to have it be something like that. So I guess we can go into talking about the way it changes, and I think inevitably the message with the film is that you cannot change the past, but you can use it to influence the future, which is a solid message, and I think I agree with that message. It's set up from the beginning.
Yeah.
for some reason, I just never like those kind of dream sequences with like the really shiny light. I just don't like that kind
Yeah, it's
of.
super bright.
I don't like that lighting. It just doesn't
Yeah.
feel right to me. But yeah, it's not a big deal. You know,
Yeah,
it's
my
just
dreams
one
are
of
dark, man. It's like I'm like, what's going on, man?
Yeah, it's
No, I'm
usually
kidding.
just like I don't know. My dreams are a lot more fragmented.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
true.
But
But
yeah,
I think for me, I liked the tightness of how it was written. I think it also comes together really nicely, like you were saying. And there are a lot of hints in the beginning to how like things play out and everything gets connected in the end. I did have a sense of like almost like an adventure being ended, I would say. Like almost like there is this story that's like completely ended, but it was just fun to watch, in my opinion. I felt like there was that kind of theme about not being able to change the past but changing the future, but I don't even think they hammered too much on that. It was a lot more of the insanity in the beginning, or almost like 2/3 of it, I would guess, and then in the end it's like trying to stop that guy and having the twists and turns of the villain being like the 12 monkeys, and like that's the total red herring, which is really interesting and weird, I guess, to like have this set up antagonist for like literally 90% of the film and be like, oops, it's the wrong person. It was actually this guy the whole time.
yeah. I mean, I like that though. It's
I
not
liked
bad.
it. I thought it was interesting. I mean, it wasn't that Brad Pitt was that set up anyways that I was like, oh man, now we're switching to this rando. But it did switch to this rando, so I'm going to put that out there. But yeah, I feel like with the ending, I think there was great tight writing, tying everything together and even hinting before. Just really beginning, middle, and end, good structure. But I feel like I'm not really gonna think that much about this movie after our discussion here. It was fun to watch, but
You know, it's one thing to bring up that the reason why I would think about this movie is because it reminded me of COVID, and I was like, oh, virus, like deadly future.
No, yeah,
It's like,
I was thinking about that when I was watching it.
Kind of timely. That's very interesting.
We gotta all live underground, guys.
Yeah, like, is that us in 5 years? I don't know. But on another level, yeah, I don't think it's not the ideas of this movie that I'm gonna remember. It's more
Yeah.
likely the style
Mhm.
and the like. It's more likely the directing. Really, I thought the direction was very like proud and very out there, and I'm gonna remember that for sure because I haven't seen a lot from Terry Gilliam either, and he's someone that I've always like wanted to watch, but I never got around to it. Like, if anything, I'm gonna remember this movie because it's gonna remind me to watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. That's literally that's what I'm gonna remember it as, the movie that finally got me to watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Did you watch Brazil?
I haven't seen Brazil either.
Me neither.
I want to watch
I want
Brazil.
to watch Brazil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost a little more than Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Though.
I mean that's legitimate too. I mean, I heard Brazil is awesome,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's kind of interesting to see where Terry Gilliam came from, though. You know, it's like you go from Monty Python, which is like a very different energy from his like direction. You know, it's very. I mean, it's like
physical
10
humor.
years older. Yeah, and it's like very. It's like normal humor. You know, it's fucking normal. 12 Monkeys and Brazil and Fear and Loathing, from what I've heard. Not super normal like direction and like things like that. It's very out there, which I always thought was interesting. And so those are kind of the things that I'm going to remember more than the ending. Like you said, I mean, I do definitely think they were building up to the message they gave at the end of the movie. I don't think it was. I think it was definitely warranted, and it was in the writing, but not necessarily like, I don't know, people said this movie was like super complicated or whatever. It's not that complicated. I feel like people always overestimate how complicated a movie is. They're never really that complicated, guys.
It's like
come on.
complicated emotionally, but not like mentally or like it's like is this guy insane? But that's not like confusing. It's just like you haven't given us enough information, so we're like wondering, you know.
And also like he definitely wasn't insane.
Yeah,
like, there was never a doubt in my mind that he was like. It was interesting to see him like knowing the truth and then like slowly becoming insane the more he travels in time. But the more insane he gets, the more normal he feels in the past. I thought that was one of my favorite parts of the film too, was like that kind of emotional look into Bruce Willis, because like there's, Brad Pitt's the antagonist, the rando is the antagonist, whatever, but it's really just mostly about him and his story with the psychiatrist, and even the sci-fi stuff is like that's like the world ending, whatever. It's like kind of on the bench for his like character growth and journey, and I thought that was the strongest part of the film too.
Yeah. I'm thinking like there is a respectable directing effort in this movie. I just think that there's certain films that Terry Gilliam's like style works with. It almost reminds me of like watching Darren Aronofsky's like Requiem for a Dream, you know?
Yeah, that one's out there too. That was like, when was that? That was 2005?
Yeah, something like that.
It might have been in the 90s though.
But I think that there's just ways that you can use the medium of film and camera techniques to
2000, by the way.
That's pretty close.
Yeah, I wasn't even that. It was 5 years off.
To elevate the theme that you're saying, you're trying to say in your movie. And from what I've heard, obviously, I've only seen this one in Monty Python as well, from Terry Gilliam. I think that there are certain stories and themes that his directing style more attunes to pushing the story of, I guess. And then some where, for me in this one, it was working in the beginning. I think it kind of fights with the more action mystery thriller of like the second half of the film, to have these zany character stuff. And as we've heard from his like directing projects after or like recently, it seems that maybe like the 90s time was just like it was just very interesting because you can't do too much with the set, but you can like make it look kind of good by just like skewing things with angles and stuff like that. Now you got a lot of CGI and stuff like that these types of aesthetic is like a lot more unacceptable, I would say, or like
you don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like it's like he aged out of his window. He was like around at a great time for his kind of style, and now since that style has evolved and changed, he hasn't put out anything. Although like I know people have talked about The Man Who Killed Don Quixote.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
That one from 2018. I think I want to watch that one because I like Don Quixote and Adam Driver's in it, and everything he touches is gold, right? But I didn't even hear it was all that good. But he hasn't really made something great since Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and that was like 98. So
yeah, I feel like honestly, I don't know much about what happens in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but it gives me a thought of like a music video, and I feel like Terry Gilliam's whole style kind of, if it isn't as much accepted in the modern age, if he puts it in like a music base, almost like a Scott Pilgrim versus the World or like Baby Driver, he can do a lot more of these like winding shots. And I honestly wish that more directors would do like kind of just movement in camera in general. Like there's like shot reverse shot, which everyone does in conversations. But I honestly really liked moments where he kind of just starts on one side of Bruce Willis's face and he just like moves to the other one like around while he's like acting in like a certain scene, and it gives you a lot more depth of the actor, and I bet it's a lot harder to not look at the camera too. I know they're professionals, but not looking at the camera whenever it's moving around your face, that's pretty interesting too. And
Yeah.
I think it'll bring out a lot of like acting chops in people and a lot of storytelling things that can be brought up by the movement of camera. And yeah, I think in recent years, I've been a proponent of moving camera a lot more. I think there was a lot of that static, clean David Fincher type stuff going on in like the 2010s that is almost, I feel like, maybe reached its like height and coming on the downhill. But I think there's a lot to learn from Terry Gilliam, and I think he's great at what he does. If it doesn't fit the story for me completely 100%, doesn't mean I didn't like the film. I enjoyed pretty much all other aspects of it, especially the realism of like action and stuff like that. Just coming off from the Jurassic World Dominion review,
Oh, yeah.
I was just like, oh, it's kind of refreshing that he has to like actually only take on like 2 people at a time, and when he's like pulling out his teeth, he's actually like gushing blood out. And honestly, in real life, I'm pretty sure it would be even more blood than that, but it's like, yeah, I mean, this guy gets, he gets hurt,
like
man.
it was so funny when she takes him like around with everyone, and she's like, all right, just act normal, and then he just like vomits blood. She's
Yeah.
like, oh my god. Stop. Just, like, chill the fuck out, bro. You know, but yeah, I totally see that. And you know, speaking of like the David Fincher like still camera kind of thing, it's interesting to see like how decades, you know, how cinematography changes throughout decades, and how it kind of cycles through in and
Yeah.
out, you know, because these like filmmaking techniques, they always come back around. It's like you get something and an audience they receive something for a while, and they just eventually, you know, you just kind of get tired of it.
Yeah.
And then you get the next generation telling you what is zany, poppy, because like this was what the 90s were all about. It was like zany, poppy, like in your face. Like every director you can think of, even David Fincher, you know, he was zany and poppy in the 90s too. And then all of a sudden he does like this still camera thing.
Yeah.
You know, you get like Terry Gilliam or Tarantino or, you know, all this stuff. And then now it's just, it's all about like hold the camera still, like character stuff. Roger Deakins, you know,
Yeah.
who, I mean, and he's brilliant. And I would say if I had to lean one way, it's still camera. But honestly, like there's so many styles, and I just think if you have, it's not necessarily whether it's still or zany or like out there or realistic. It's just more about the execution, you know. If you've got a good take and a good idea on the story, and it's what's best for the story, and it's kind of right for the culture of the time, to be honest, you gotta like have it. You can't just have the right idea, you know. You gotta have the right idea at the right time.
Imagine, man, so many things gotta go right.
Yeah, you gotta be so lucky. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that's just a long way of saying it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's just kind of cool to think about, like how cinematography and style changes over time like this, because you know, even someone like Terry Gilliam, he has to change, you know.
Yeah.
He has to move forward with his directing style, and now he's got a very realistic kind of just not gothic weird expressionist style. He's got the style of today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but overall, I like the world that they built. I was kind of wishing there would be more in the future too, because it had enough to interest me, but it didn't have enough to set itself apart, I would say.
Yeah.
It gave me a lot of THX, like maybe not in the color
Gave me
palette,
some
but
alien vibes.
yeah,
really.
like grunge, like pipes and people
Yeah.
with like really pale faces. I guess that makes sense since they don't go in the sun. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, but it didn't explore how everyone was living, and there was a lot of things that you were asked to assume or elaborate on your own, which generally and for the most part in this film I really liked, because I never felt like he was talking down on us, even when it's like cycling between future and present and all that kind of stuff. I never felt like he was reiterating things for the audience like, oh yeah, this guy isn't insane, or like these things are real or something like that, you know. But I just wish there was a little bit more exploration on, I don't know, there was a very little sci-fi to the sci-fi movie is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I definitely, I didn't even like the look of the future very much. It just felt kind of just what everyone else was doing. It is, you know, which is funny enough. Like, we're talking about this very unique directing style, but the set design was actually kind of normal for the future at the time. But I did like, you know, you were talking about, I don't even remember, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with what you were talking about. It was like the way when he comes back, they're not like holding your hand or anything, right?
Yeah.
It's nice to see, like, you never see how he looks when he comes back. They never show him like going back, they just show him disappearing.
Yeah.
And then he just wakes up and you're like, it kind of adds the confusion, schizophrenic kind of tone they're going for. And I thought that was a good either writing or editing decision, you know, because you never fully get back on your feet. You're always kind of stumbling through this movie.
Yeah. And it never like shows him like teleporting or that kind of stuff. I never even really understood at first. I thought he was like, his mind was getting sent back or something.
Yeah, me too. I thought they were doing like Days of Future Past.
Yeah. But he just kind of like appears. He's like the main character, but you don't have to stick with him, like his perspective the whole time. And I think that was a great choice, because one of the times that I noticed was when she's spray painting the storefront or wherever those guys were about to go release the animals or anything, and he's just like there in the background, you know. And there's a chance that he just appeared right there, right then, but there's also a chance that he's appeared like a couple minutes ago and he just kind of like wandered over there or something like that, you know. And it's an interesting way to reintroduce conflict in the story in a way that isn't really abrasive, you know. They allowed themselves to be able to write more for her being alone or write less. They just have him appear at any time and she's like, well, there's police around me, so now we gotta start running again. So, so it allows like the exposition to be let off, but anytime they need to introduce danger or conflict, they just he appears, and I think that's pretty convenient, a really smart writing strategy, I guess. Not like putting us in his perspective, having to know every experience that he goes through, you know.
Yeah, and it feels natural, right? Because she, at that point, the psychiatrist is really driving the story, because she's the one that now understands what's going on, and in essence, you feel like you kind of need to follow her because she's the one doing everything. And obviously, like, you know, it feels obvious, but it's not necessarily a decision you would make whether you're writing or directing that, because it just feels natural to follow Bruce Willis. But I do see what you're saying with that, for sure.
All right, so I guess we talked about pretty much everything. I thought I don't know, do you want to talk about the music at all? How was that for you?
Music was good.
Yeah,
you know, it was good. Like, I genuinely good. It wasn't like fine. It was like, it was good. It wasn't like great, but I thought it was, you know, above average.
Mm-hmm. There's also this one scene in the beginning where they do this draw in black. I'm not exactly sure how it's called, but I don't know why. I've just been thinking about that shot for like the entire movie, and I just think it just matches like the tone of the film so much. It's like kind of goofy, almost cartoonish, this movie. And I think Terry Gilliam's like whole aesthetic is very like cartoonish. It reminds me of like Goofy or like Donald the Duck, and like walking around being like But anyways, that little like draw in black in the beginning kind of made me miss those types of scene transitions. Like there's a lot of cut tos nowadays, and it even makes me think of Star Wars as like wash.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like other than the fact that that's now iconically Star Wars, and you can't do it without referencing Star Wars in a way, but you can't do this one, and I feel like some movies can benefit from the way they cut certain scenes together, not just like cut to another scene, like doing some type of not camera, but like editing maneuver to kind of spice things up. And that was one of the first scene transitions that I noticed in this film, and I was like, I kind of missed that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you got to be pretty bold to pull it off. Like you already got it. It's not a very realism kind of transition.
I mean, you're not gonna put it in The Social Network, but there are some movies that could use a little bit of that flair.
Yeah, no, I think for sure. I think maybe we can just start a campaign. Bring back stylized transitions.
Do the wash. We'll do the wash right now.
Do the wash.
We should just do the wash every time we cut from our.
Every time we do a mid-episode cut, just.
I'm just kidding. Our computer can't handle it, guys.
Bro, we can barely handle these shitty episodes.
I know. We're just trying to put our names down here, and it's like, your computer cannot export this anymore. It's too strong.
It's too much.
Yeah.
And imagine just putting a picture of our rating. Just blows that shit up.
It's like,
it's terrible.
Something more than audio and video.
Bruh. But yeah.
So
what were we talking about?
I was talking about I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, the transitions are good.
Before we wrapped ourselves up, but yeah, I think. Do you want to start your overall ending or?
Yeah, I can do so I would say it's a good. This is a great time capsule for, very expressionistic, 90s, in your face, sci-fi and thriller. It's a good intro into Terry Gilliam's filmography, and I thought it worked on a lot of levels. It's not like it's my favorite movie I've ever seen, but it definitely I definitely appreciate the style and what it was going for, and I thought it was very fun and very mind-boggling, literally making my head hurt, making my mind, maybe mind-bobbling. So I would say it's got all of that. I love Brad Pitt in it. I really do. I know this guy does, but
I liked him.
I would say I'm more naturally inclined to cheesier performances. I would say, like Jake Gyllenhaal in Okja. That's another example. I like it when actors do. I like it when people just go a little bit too far. And I would say he does that here, and I appreciate it.
It definitely does.
So, yeah.
I think you've tackled most of it for me. Personally, I feel like there are so many aspects of this film that work, and it just happened to be in the time that it was popular as well, which made this movie a lot of attention, and it had a lot of those opening ideas that we tend to take for granted now, like Inception, that kind of stuff, like big like balancing of different storylines and that kind of stuff. So I thought it was ambitious. I thought the writing was great. The only thing I felt for me was this lackluster thematic presence in there, but it's a fun movie to watch. So all in all, I appreciated that. Maybe a little bit forgettable after a while, other than the directing and some of the acting. But my biggest thing is just, for me personally, there was a little bit of a missing heart to the film. Maybe that was in the more grounded sci-fi nature of the film that I was expecting versus the directing, or the romance maybe that was kind of off-putting, or the lack of a really strong antagonist, I guess. But either a mix of those or some of those, there I can't say anything was wrong with the writing, and I can't say anything was wrong with the directing or other portions of the film, like the acting and set design and stuff like that. But it just didn't completely fit together to me. And to say that that's the only criticism I have would be a pretty good statement, I'd say, because, like I said, there's no criticism on any specific portion. It's just a little bit of that melding tone that I was having a hard time with personally.
Well, I would even say I didn't love a lot of the writing. I felt like oftentimes it was tight and maybe like, complicated, but like you said, it didn't have as much heart, and it didn't, there were some things that, maybe could have used some more development or like directions I would have rather it went than how it did. Like, for example, like, he dies in the end. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I didn't care at all. I feel like some of those things, I feel like that kind of goes on the writing because I appreciated the style and the direction and the cinematography. It felt like the writing was weaker.
Yeah.
And, it's a good example for me of like, you can have a tight story that's not necessarily a good story,
Yeah,
and you can have a story that's not tight that can be a great story. It just, it always, I feel like for film, there's rules and then it always depends,
Yeah.
It's like there's general ideas, but it depends. And I think for me,
Yeah, I definitely agree now that you say that, because I'm like, oh yeah, I guess he saw himself get shot as a kid, and it doesn't really tackle that any more than the fact that he can barely remember it and doesn't know why. But other than that, it doesn't tackle like the trauma that must have been, or eventually when he realizes, like when he goes into the airport, he's like, I recognize it. It's like, oh, you recognize it from the vision that you had, but not necessarily the fact that, oh yeah, I watched myself die.
Yeah.
So yeah, now that you say that, definitely agree. Tight writing, but there were a lot of flaws in getting me to care for the characters and the villains and just the whole tackling of characters in general, I guess.
Yeah, and so if I were to give it a rating, right,
What's it gonna
if we're
be?
giving out ratings,
What's it gonna be?
solid movie, solid story, great directing, really fun acting. I give it a red turtle. Straight up, no squirt.
Damn, okay, wow. That's actually surprising because I was gonna give it a red turtle and a squirt.
Wow! See,
I thought I was being hard on this movie.
That's so funny. That just reminds you that ratings are bullshit, and we just did this because we feel like it's better if we have ratings.
Yeah, it's just for you guys. You'll know what to expect. You'll start to trust our opinion.
That's so funny because I'm certain I like this more than you.
Yeah, I don't know why either. I thought it's 7.5.
Yeah, it's just I was very. I remember I gave like Petite Maman a red turtle and a squirt, and I was like, I like that more than this.
Okay.
But actually, they're pretty close. It's like. Yeah. Ratings are bullshit. I don't know.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think it's kind of the same to me because I thought that there's a lot more directorial things in that. I guess there was a little bit more heart, but this one had a little bit more ambition too. So it's like balancing.
I agree with that too. Yeah. I mean, they're close for sure. So. That's hilarious, though, that you have a high rating.
I was almost about to change it. I was like, this isn't how it's supposed to work. But I'm like, you know what? I've decided so.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
That's
after
hilarious.
all that's been said, after all the praise this man's given, the Brad Pitt flame that I got.
Hey, Brad Pitt is still great. No matter what rating you get.
Sorry, wasn't serious enough for Josh, but I still liked him more, apparently.
Hey, Brad Pitt, you're a golden turtle in my heart. But anyway, guys, if you liked this and you made it all the way here, that's crazy. You should subscribe at this point, obviously. Like, if you made it this far, you gotta subscribe.
Yes.
And if you're already subscribed, then you should like and comment and talk with us about 12 Monkeys.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular film, not like the Underground's one that sometimes I recommend, like Song on the Second Floor. I'm sure some of you guys have seen this movie, so let us know what about Terry Gilliam that you liked, whether or not you liked Brad Pitt's performance.
yeah, let us know that too. And, you probably, film, it's a big thing. A lot of people know a lot of things. If you got any cool tidbits about 12 Monkeys or Terry Gilliam or anything we talked about, we'd love to talk with you, add to the conversation, because we are definitely, I feel like sometimes we talk out of our ass. We don't know very much about 12 Monkeys at all, know?
Terry Gilliam's a huge director, but we've pretty much only seen this one, so there's some head ass stuff we might.
There's a lot of, there's a lot to talk about, so if anyone has any additions, that would be really cool.
All right. Well, that's all we have. Bye.